All right, so maybe you're interested in staying in an Alaskan forestry cabin like we were. We stayed in the West Turner Lake cabin, Turner Lake West, I guess more appropriately called. And when we booked this trip, we did not know what to expect. The information online was not very informative. There's a couple reviews here and there, a couple of clippets of videos over the last 15 years, but it didn't answer some of the questions I had. What all is there at the cabin? What's there to do around the cabin? What amenities does it have? In general, just like what to expect, because that greatly dictates the packing. Like, do I need to bring pots and pans? And do I need to bring sleeping bags? Do I need to bring firewood? Do I need to bring mosquito netting? Do I need to bring toilet paper? All the stuff you don't know when you book it. And if you've never been before, you might find this video a little bit helpful. Now, this information is specifically for Turner Lake West, but it probably loosely applies to all of the forestry cabins in Alaska. Now, this video is not going to talk about the logistics of how to get to Turner Lake and all the costs associated with it and all the planning and how you do that. I already made that video. We'll leave a link in the description to this one. This is specifically going to talk about the cabin experience itself. If you want to learn about how to get there, watch that video once this one's done. So in this video, we are going to cover access, so kind of a couple different ways that you can actually get into the cabin. Some of this will be overlap from the logistics and planning video. The cabin and its amenities, the outhouse, the heating, the fishing, the hiking, and the wildlife. I don't know, is it 7 things? I can't count. Okay, so the access, to keep it short and sweet, because I went into detail before, really only 2 ways to get there. Float plane, lands you right in the water, pulls you right up to the dock. Super cool way to enter the cabin. It's beautiful flying down, looking over it from the top and just landing on the water. That's the way to do it, 100%. The other way, if you don't like flying, you can rent a skiff in Juneau, a little boat, and they'll just chug-lug up the bay and into the Taku Inlet, and they will drop you off at the trailhead marker. It's about a 3/4 mile hike to the cabin. That's the only 2 ways to get in. You can't drive there. You could probably parachute in if you're awesome, but we didn't do that. So that's the access. The skiff and the hike is probably fun, but just keep in mind, if you have a bunch of gear, anything more than just a backpack, it's not going to be pleasant. It's not a steep or technically challenging hike, but it's slippery and muddy and wet, and there's a small grade to it. Just keep that in mind. I'd fly in for sure. So the cabin and its amenities. The cabin is a super old, I say super old, I don't know, 60-year-old cabin. It's a log cabin. It's got a beautiful stone fireplace. It is I think it's one of 2 cabins in the whole forestry department group that's up there that actually has a stone fireplace, and that's actually one of the reasons we picked it. It's close to Juneau. It's in a beautiful spot. Had a stone fireplace. I'm a sucker for stone. It's got nice windows that overlook the lake and the waterfalls. I mean, it's a beautiful place. So once you enter the cabin, it's got 1 main room, but there is a divider and a door that can kind of segregate the bedroom from the living room / kitchen. Now in the bedroom, there are 2 sets of bunk beds, 1 on each side. The bottom bunk is probably big enough for 2 adults. The top bunk, I would say only 1 adult each. So really you could have 6 adults in there, but it would be a little cramped. Now, 2 adults and 4 kids, sure, all day. The 3 adults that went in my party, we had plenty of room, 1 person in each bunk. We had 1 bunk that was just kind of like storage. There's also 2 closets and 2 cabinets on either side of the bunks. Plenty of room for storage. It makes it easy to kind of keep your stuff tucked away nice and neat. And that's pretty much the bedroom. Now when you go into the living room / kitchen, there are 2 cabinets on the walls. One of them is for like dry goods, like food. It's got a little latch on it, little mouse-proof holes for ventilation. And then there's another cabinet when you first walk in the door that's got like a first aid kit. It's got all the journals from decades of other people who've stayed there. and some like general cabin information. There's a countertop right next to one of the windows. It's like a workstation. It's like, or a prep station for making food or prepping food or whatever you want to do. It's where we put our camp stove with our propane bottle. There is a very heavy duty solid wood table and solid benches. It doesn't fit 4 well, but 4 people could sit there, but it's a little cramped. This table, if the carvings on the table are accurate, some of those names were carved into that table in the 50s, which may or may not be true. The carving is highly discouraged anymore. In the early days, carving your name and the date was popular, but in the years since, the forestry department has asked that you don't carve in the wood anymore. Instead, write in the journal, tell your story, make jokes, do all that fun stuff. There's also a plastic chair, so there's technically seating for 5. There's a broom, there is a dustpan, there's a little brush, and there's an ash bucket. That's pretty much all that's inside. Anything else you can't live without, you need to bring with you. Now, before we go outside, back to the journals real quick. I will say I wish I had read the journals as soon as we arrived. They were pretty entertaining. Some of them had cute little drawings, but more than anything, there were tips about fishing, where to fish, how to catch some fish. You know, we weren't trout fishermen when we got there, and so it would have been pretty handy. So when you get there, take some time, read the journals, and maybe even save a few minutes to make your own journal entry. If you stay there, you might see ours. Now, when you get outside of the cabin, there's another cabinet affixed to the wall. I think that's what they consider the ice box. There is no insulation or refrigeration of any kind. It's just wood mounted to the outside of the cabin with a door and a latch. But I suppose when it's cold, it's kind of like an ice box. So you can store some food and stuff in there, but I don't know why you would. Maybe that's just an Alaskan thing. So outside there is another bench with a nice little fire pit with a little flip top grate, so you can have a nice outdoor campfire or cookout right there. There are 2 aluminum john boats. Both of them were in pretty good condition. There were a bunch of oars. Some of them weren't in great shape, but there were plenty that were in perfectly usable shape. There was a fishing net, there was a maul for splitting wood, and that's about all that was on the outside. Keep in mind, I didn't say anything about there being firewood present because there's not. Behind the cabin, there's a little covered shelter. It's just a roof and some posts. I don't know if that's intended to be firewood storage or what that is, but there was nothing there for us, and so there's probably not often an excess of good dry wood sitting there. All right, the outhouse, which may be important for some people to know what they're getting into, was actually pretty decent. It's just a regular old porta potty, but it's probably the most beautiful porta potty I've ever seen, both just in terms of its setting and your view from the inside. It's probably a 150 yard walk from the cabin itself, and it's on the same trail that goes back to the Taku Inlet if you were to hike in. So it's a pretty nice trail. It is a little slippery, it can be a little muddy, and it's not a short walk, and in the dark you definitely want a light. But it looks well kept. There's a little wooden platform leading up to the outhouse, which is very slippery when wet. Yes, I slipped. But the outhouse itself, it was nice. Now, maybe by the end of the season, it's probably not going to be so nice when it warms up and it's been used all summer. But we were the first ones there this year, and so it was pretty delightful. And let me tell you, leaving that door open while you're sitting there doing paperwork and you're watching that waterfall right there in front of you, it was nice. Best porta potty I've ever been in. All right, so let's jump to the heating. Now, when you're there, heating may not be that important. We were there first week of June. It still got into the 30s at night. So it was pretty chilly. You have two options for heating. Like I mentioned, there is a stone fireplace and there's an oil burning stove slash heater. Now the fireplace is what we elected to use, and we bought wood from in town and brought it on the float plane because you just can't count on there being wood available. There's not going to be a stock of it left for you, more than likely, and there's not going to be an abundance of down dry timber. If you want to stay warm with the fireplace, the best bet is to bring in wood. We brought 6 cases of wood from the Sportsman's Warehouse there in town, which we were able to walk to and bring it back. And I think it was like $8 a case. And it wasn't enough. It was very dry, very light wood, not super dense. It burned really fast. And to make matters worse, the firebox on the fireplace, the structure that kind of holds the heat in the cabin and doesn't let it just, shoot straight out, it was in really bad shape. We rigged it up the best we could, but we actually never, ever got that cabin warm with just the firewood. We were heavily clothed and in sleeping bags with the fire going as hot as we could get it. The flue and the firebox just aren't in good shape. They're in pretty desperate need of repair. But it was still a beautiful fireplace, and it definitely, it was a fire, which is what you want. It just wasn't very good for warmth. So the wood situation's not great. You got to pay for it. You got to bring it in. You got to have enough. And even if you do, you probably will still be cold if the temperatures are pretty low at night. Now, the other option is the oil burning stove, which we didn't use. I've never used an oil burning stove. I don't really know the ins and outs. I don't know their fuel consumption rates. It's all pretty foreign to me, which is why we didn't use it. But if we went back, I would probably bring a few gallons of fuel and give it a try. It looked like it was in good shape. There were some recently replaced parts, so it seemed like it was a good service and operation. You can only use, number 1 stove oil and number 1 diesel fuel, which you can buy at the store. You just gotta remember, you gotta lug that stuff on the airplane, off the airplane, or on the boat and hike it in. And I honestly can't tell you how much fuel it takes, but reading the journals, I saw anywhere from people saying they burn through a gallon a night to some people said they burn through 3 gallons a night. Now that's going to depend on how warm or cold-blooded you are. It's going to depend on how many blankets you have. It's going to depend on how cold it is. It's going to depend on how high you have it cranked. But that's the range. So if you're someone who's cold all the time, you're going to need to probably err on the side of 3 gallons a day. If you're someone who doesn't get cold super easy, you might be able to get away with a gallon a day. But don't take my word for it. I would say bring more than you think you're going to need. But I will say, if you do go with the wood option, one little hack that we figured out was that there was some dry wood out there, but it's where you'd least expect it. It was actually in the lake. There is driftwood everywhere out there, all along that kind of southwestern side of the lake where the water kind of flows out into the inlet. And as a result, you'll see big sections of driftwood that are kind of protruding out of the water. So we took our little rowboat over there and our little folding saw, which is I highly, highly recommend. We paddle over, we cut off a 5 or 6 foot log, put it in the boat, we'd take it back to shore, we'd cut it up into smaller pieces, we'd use the maul that was there, and we'd have firewood. We did that. We spent a good part of a whole day just floating around, cutting up wood and bringing it back. So there is some wood out there if you're willing to go get it. And it was kind of fun, honestly. The fishing. We were really looking forward to the fishing. Like I mentioned, we'd never been trout fishing before. I was just looking forward to just reeling in some monster trout. We didn't. We did catch a lot of fish, probably more than 20. But a majority, probably 95% of the fish we caught were the protected cutthroat trout, which you cannot keep. It's catch and release only. So it was kind of a shame. We brought all the seasoning and flour. We're going to deep fry fish, but we didn't. And that's okay. The fishing was still fun. We're not experienced fishermen. We do it for fun back home. and we just look forward to doing it in a different setting. The cutthroat trout we caught were really nice and pretty. It was a whole different experience, and even though we didn't get to keep and catch, even though we didn't get to catch and keep any big fish, it was still a whole lot of fun. So if you want to know where the cutthroat trout are, if you're not trying to eat them, I'll try to overlay a map here and try to illustrate where they were. Pretty much anywhere you could see the bottom and there was driftwood, if you cast it out in between the driftwood, there's cutthroat down there, plenty of them. And we did catch some decent sized ones, and we didn't really even try that hard. Once we realized we weren't catching anything but cutthroat, we kind of just relaxed a little bit and didn't try as hard, but it was still a really good time. It was fun watching my dad and my son catch all those fish. They both caught more than I did. And one thing I was really torn about before we got there, I really thought we needed to bring waders. It just seems like when you think Alaskan fishing, you think, oh, waders, of course. But really, we ended up not bringing them, and I'm glad we didn't, because they're big and they're heavy. And if you're staying on the lake, there's nowhere to wear waders. Those mountainsides are so steep, there's nowhere to wade to. If you step foot in the water, it's going to be, 10 foot deep in most cases. So don't worry about waders. Stay in the john boats. The only place you could even use waders is out in the inlet. And, if you want to walk that far to fish, you can, but you definitely don't need waders. You can catch fish right out of the boat. So hiking, West Turner Lake is not really a great hiking spot. If you're one of those people that want to get up, have some coffee, and start hiking every morning, this is probably not ideal for you. This is more of a sit back and relax cabin. Sit by the fire and drink a beer kind of cabin. Because, like I mentioned, the mountains that surround you are so steep, and where it's not steep, it's so wooded. There's no hiking trails except for the single trail that goes from the cabin to the inlet where you can get dropped off and picked up from a boat. That's it. There's no other marked, maintained trail. Now, we did get a wild hair one day and decided we wanted to get closer to the whitewater where the lake overflowed down into the inlet, because there's a probably 200-yard section of really pretty whitewater with these giant boulders and sharp, steep, cliffs. They're not really cliffs. They're just, mountains on the side. But we really wanted to get closer. So my son and I did eventually find a path to get down into a shallow section. It wasn't shallow, a flat section where we could see the water. We were actually able to climb out, jump, and land on one of the big boulders. And we did have to bushwhack it. There was no doubt about it. Do some climbing, do some jumping, but we made it. I'll do my best to overlay a map here and do a little drawing where you can see the route we have to take. This is all going to be from memory, so bear with me if I'm wrong, but just know there is a way to get down there, and it is really pretty once you do. Also be careful, because it looked like prime bear real estate, but we didn't see one down there. So speaking of bear, let's talk about the wildlife. Unfortunately, we did not see a single bear at the cabin. I say unfortunately. It's probably a good thing that we didn't. Everyone wants to see a bear, in a safe manner, but we didn't have the opportunity one way or another. Now, we did see fairly fresh, large bear droppings right outside the cabin, probably 6 feet from the cabin. And not far away from that, we did see what looked like some pretty heavy-duty claw marks and a fallen tree. It could have been anything, but, we told ourselves it was a giant bear. But we didn't see any bear. In fact, we really didn't see any wildlife there aside from birds and fish. We didn't see any moose. We didn't see bear. We didn't see a squirrel. I don't even know if there's squirrels up there. But that was okay. I mean, lots of birds. There were ducks. Obviously, the fish we saw. That was enough for us. It wasn't a wildlife trip. It was an unplug, get away, relax, and just kind of disconnect from the world kind of trip. So if you're going for wildlife or hiking, Turner Lake West is probably not the best place to do it. Now, we know there are bear out there for sure, and I know there's eagles out there. I know there are moose somewhere over there. We just didn't see them. But reading the journals, many people over the years have seen bear out there. So keep that in mind. If you're up there, you just have to expect it. Pack your bear spray or your Glock 20 and just be careful and, do the whole hey bear thing every time you're walking around, which is what we did. We made plenty of noise. We gave any bear in the area ample opportunity to get away. And so that's pretty much it. I hope this video and my descriptions of the cabin and the area, plus the video showing what to expect, are helpful or were helpful. I know it would have helped me immensely. So passing this along, I know it's a popular spot. I assume there's got to be some other people who are curious. What is this cabin about? What does it have to offer? What am I going to find when I get there? It was a really awesome time. We had so much fun. We do want to go back. We may pick another cabin just because we like to mix it up a little bit. We may pick somewhere that's got a little more flat land and rivers so we can do some river fishing. But you can't go wrong. Turner Lake was really pretty. My only regret is that we didn't stay longer and paddle out further on the water. We stayed pretty close to the cabin, but there were some really cool things we could see when we were in the plane coming in and coming out. If we just got a little bit further east on the south side, there's a cool spot where we could have got out and just camped out and had a picnic for the day. You can probably see that on a map too. But like I said, if you want to hear any more about how we got there, not just what the stay was like, you can find that video in the description. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I will do my best to answer them to the best of my knowledge while it's still fresh on my brain. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.